The hospital stood quiet under the dark night sky. Only the sound of distant sirens and blinking red lights broke the silence. Inside the emergency room, nurses moved fast, doctors spoke in low voices, and machines beeped without stopping. It was another long night at the city hospital. A black man slowly walked through the main doors. His name was not important at that moment. What mattered was his condition. He looked weak. His face was pale. One hand pressed hard against his chest, and his breathing was heavy and uneven. Every step looked painful, but still, he moved forward. He had no other place to go. At the front desk, a nurse looked up at him for a second. Her eyes showed no concern, only tiredness. She asked his name and problem in a flat voice. The man tried to speak, but his words came out broken. He said he felt dizzy, his chest hurt, and he could not breathe properly. The nurse typed something on the computer and told him to wait. Minutes passed. The man stood there, holding the counter to keep himself from falling. People came in after him. Some were taken inside quickly. Stretchers rolled past him. No one looked at him again. Finally, a doctor walked out from behind the emergency doors. She was wearing a white coat and gloves. Her face was calm, almost cold. The nurse handed her the file. The doctor looked at it for a few seconds, then looked at the man from head to toe. "There are no beds available," the doctor said. The man blinked, confused. He thought he did not hear her right. He slowly shook his head and said, "Please, I feel very sick. I can't stand." The doctor did not move closer. She did not check his pulse. She did not ask more questions. She only repeated, "We have no beds. You need to go somewhere else." The words hit him harder than the pain. He looked around the room, hoping someone would help. He saw beds behind the doors. He saw nurses standing and talking. He saw space. But still, he was told there was no place for him. "I waited long," he said quietly. "Please help me." The doctor's face did not change. She closed the file and handed it back to the nurse. "We can't do anything," she said and turned away. Just like that, it was over. The man stood there for a moment, frozen. People walked past him as if he was invisible. The nurse avoided his eyes. No one stopped the doctor. No one questioned her words. Slowly, the man turned around and walked out of the hospital. The night air felt cold against his skin. His legs were shaking. He reached the bench outside the entrance and sat down carefully, holding his chest again. His breathing was worse now. Inside the hospital, life continued as normal. Phones rang. Doctors laughed quietly near the desk. A stretcher passed by with a patient lying comfortably under a warm blanket. None of them looked outside. What they did not know was this: someone inside the hospital had seen everything. From the moment the man walked in, from the way the doctor spoke, to the moment he was sent away. That person checked the clock. 45 minutes had just started. And before those minutes ended, this hospital would face a night it would never forget. Outside the hospital, the man sat on the cold bench, trying to stay awake. The lights above the entrance buzzed softly, and the night felt heavy and slow. Cars passed by, but none stopped. He pressed his hand to his chest and took short breaths, hoping the pain would fade. Minutes felt like hours. His head dropped forward, then lifted again. He did not want to sleep. He was afraid that if he closed his eyes, he might never open them. He looked back at the hospital doors, expecting someone to come out and call his name. No one came. A light rain started to fall. Small drops touched his face and soaked his thin jacket. He shivered, but still did not move. Going somewhere else felt impossible. His body was already failing him. Inside, the emergency room stayed busy. A nurse laughed quietly at a joke. Another nurse checked her phone. A doctor walked past with coffee in hand. No one spoke about the man outside. The pain in his chest grew sharper. His arm felt weak, and his fingers went numb. He tried to stand, but his legs gave up, and he fell back onto the bench. He whispered for help, but his voice was lost in the sound of traffic. He thought about his family. He remembered his mother telling him to be strong and patient. He remembered his son waiting at home, thinking his father would come back soon. The thought made his eyes fill with tears. He did not want his son to grow up without him. The hospital doors opened for a moment, and warm light spilled outside. A woman stepped out to smoke. She glanced at the man and quickly looked away. She finished her cigarette and went back inside, leaving the door to close slowly behind her. The man leaned forward, trying to catch air. His vision blurred, and dark spots filled his eyes. His body felt heavy, like it was sinking into the ground. Still, no help came. Inside the hospital, Another patient was brought in. This patient was taken straight to a bed. Nurses rushed around, fast and focused. The contrast was clear, but no one spoke about it. From a corner near the hallway, a woman watched quietly. She had been there for over an hour. She was dressed simply, without signs of importance. No one paid attention to her. She saw the empty beds. She heard the doctor say there were no beds. She noticed the time on the wall clock. The woman walked closer to the window near the entrance. Through the glass, she saw the man on the bench. She saw him bend forward, holding his chest. Her face tightened with concern. She did not look away. She asked a nurse about the man. The nurse shrugged and said he was already sent away. The woman asked why. The nurse said there was nothing they could do. The woman nodded slowly. She thanked the nurse and stepped back. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her eyes stayed sharp. She took out her phone and typed a short note. Outside, the man slid down from the bench and sat on the ground. His back rested against the wall. His breathing became slow and uneven. The rain washed over him, and his strength faded. The woman checked the clock again. 30 minutes had passed. She made a decision. This night was not going to end the way the staff expected. She looked once more through the glass and memorized every detail. Faces, names, movements, and silence. She understood that moments like this defined lives. For the man outside, time was running out. For the hospital, truth was about to arrive. She straightened her posture, took a deep breath, and prepared for what came next. Justice would not wait, and neither would she anymore tonight inside those walls now. Inside the hospital, the woman moved slowly through the hallway, careful not to draw attention. Her face stayed calm, but her mind was sharp and alert. She watched every step the staff took, every laugh, every delay, and every careless moment happening around her silently without interruption or fear tonight. She noticed the doctor who sent the man away standing near the desk, relaxed and smiling. The same doctor spoke softly to a nurse, joking as if nothing serious had happened. The woman felt anger rise, but she kept her emotions locked deep inside her chest, breathing slow, steady, controlled. She walked past several empty rooms and saw unused beds behind half-closed curtains. Machines were ready, clean, and silent. There was space, there was help, but it was denied. She wrote the room numbers in her phone and checked the time again without hesitation, noting seconds passing quickly now. The woman remembered why she was there that night. She was not visiting. She was not waiting. She was observing. Her role required silence and patience. Hospitals trusted her presence without question. Staff believed she was invisible, and that belief made her work easier than anyone expected during moments like. At the front desk, she asked another nurse about available beds. The nurse answered quickly, saying the hospital was full. The woman thanked her and walked away. She already knew the truth. Lies repeated many times did not become facts inside broken systems that protected careless choices and quiet harm. Through the glass doors, she looked outside again. The man was no longer on the bench. He was sitting on the ground, leaning against the wall. His head was low, his body weak. Fear tightened her chest, but her focus did not break under pressure, stress, or growing urgency now. She checked the clock hanging above the nurse's station. 38 minutes had passed since the man was rejected. Each minute felt heavier. She knew medical facts. She knew delays killed. She also knew responsibility would soon demand answers from everyone involved in this building before sunrise arrived today again. A security camera blinked red above the entrance. She noticed its angle and coverage. Everything was recorded. The truth was already saved. People often forgot cameras watched without emotion. Tonight, those silent witnesses would speak louder than words spoken by staff who failed their duty when it mattered most here. The woman stepped into a quiet office and closed the door. She made a phone call and spoke in a low voice. She gave names, times, and actions. The person on the other end listened carefully and said only one sentence in reply that changed everything moving forward tonight immediately. She ended the call and stood still for a moment. There was no doubt now. The process had started. Outside, the man struggled to breathe. Inside, the hospital continued pretending nothing was wrong. That lie was about to collapse very soon under pressure from truth, evidence, and authority arriving fast. The woman returned to the hallway and waited. Her face showed no anger. Her posture stayed calm. But inside, her resolve was firm. She would not allow silence to win tonight. The next few minutes would decide many futures, including lives, careers, and the meaning of duty inside these walls. Outside, rain mixed with tears on the man's face. He barely moved now. His chest rose slowly, then stopped, then rose again. Time was cruel. The woman watched through the glass, refusing to look away from the truth unfolding before her eyes during these final minutes of waiting and change. She checked the clock one last time. 43 minutes had passed. Help was coming. Consequences were coming. This night would expose more than neglect. It would reveal character. The woman took a deep breath. The hospital was about to face judgment without escape, excuse, delay, denial, or mercy tonight. Sirens cut through the night as black cars stopped in front of the hospital. Doors opened fast, and serious faces stepped out into the rain. Security straightened. Nurses froze mid-step. Something was wrong, and everyone felt it at once. The woman walked forward calmly as the group entered. Her badge was now visible, shining under the bright lights. Conversation stopped. The doctor who had sent the man away felt her smile fade. She recognized the face instantly and felt her stomach drop. The woman spoke clearly and without emotion. She asked for the night supervisor, the attending doctor, and the full emergency staff. No one argued. No one delayed. Authority filled the room like heavy air, making it hard to breathe. Outside, paramedics rushed to the man on the ground. They checked his pulse, placed him on a stretcher, and moved quickly. The doors opened wide this time. He was brought inside at last, surrounded by urgent hands and flashing equipment. The woman followed, watching everything. She saw staff suddenly move faster, voices turning sharp and nervous. Beds appeared. Machines turned on. The lie of no space disappeared without a single word spoken. In the main hall, the woman stopped and turned to face the doctor. She asked one simple question. Why was this patient refused care? The doctor tried to speak, then stopped. Her eyes searched for help, but none came. Cameras were mentioned. Times were read aloud. Empty rooms were listed. Statements fell apart one by one. Silence followed, thick and uncomfortable, exposing every excuse that had been used earlier. The woman then revealed who she was. She was the head of the hospital board and a senior health authority. Gasps filled the room. Faces turned pale. The power dynamic shifted in a single breath. She explained that discrimination, neglect, and dishonesty would not be tolerated. Not tonight. Not ever. Her voice remained calm, but every word carried weight that pressed hard against those listening. She ordered an immediate review of footage and records. She suspended the doctor on duty and removed the entire night staff from service pending investigation. No shouting was needed. The decision was final. Some tried to apologize. Others blamed pressure and stress. The woman did not respond. She walked toward the emergency room where the man was being treated, her focus fixed on his condition. Doctors worked to stabilize him. Oxygen flowed. Monitors beeped steadily. He was alive, but fragile. The woman watched quietly, knowing how close this had come to ending differently. She turned back to the staff one last time. She said this hospital existed to save lives, not judge them. Failure would be answered with action. Then she walked away, leaving the room silent and changed forever. No one moved for several seconds after she left. The weight of what happened settled slowly. The hospital no longer felt safe for excuses. Every sound seemed louder, every step uncertain. Staff members avoided each other's eyes, understanding that their choices had been seen and recorded. Outside, rain began to slow, tapping softly against the glass doors. The flashing lights reflected on wet ground like warnings. The building stood the same, but its truth had changed. Power had entered quietly and spoken firmly. Inside the emergency room, the man was still fighting. Nurses worked with focus, guided by fear and guilt. Time continued, but control had shifted. This was no longer a normal night. It was a moment that would be remembered, repeated, and judged. And somewhere between those walls, responsibility finally woke up. This chapter closed quietly, but consequences were already moving. Phones would ring. Reports would be written. Careers would end. Lives would be questioned. By morning, the hospital would face truth in daylight, unable to hide behind darkness ever again. Nothing would return to the way it was, because silence had finally lost its power. That night changed everything. Morning light slowly entered the hospital through large glass windows. The night shift was over, but the tension had not left the building. Staff members walked quietly, avoiding conversations. The usual morning noise was missing. Everyone knew something serious had happened. In a small meeting room, several staff members sat with worried faces. Some looked tired, others scared. Phones were silent. No one joked. No one smiled. They waited for instructions, knowing their future was no longer in their hands. The woman returned, calm and focused. She carried a folder filled with reports, camera records, and written statements. She did not rush. She did not raise her voice. Her control made the room feel smaller and heavier. She began to speak. She explained what the review had found. Times, actions, and decisions were listed clearly. There was no confusion. The evidence spoke without emotion. The truth was complete. The doctor who sent the patient away was called forward. Her actions were explained in simple words. She was told her behavior violated medical duty and basic human values. Her position was terminated immediately. Her badge was taken. She left the room without speaking. Next, the woman addressed the nurses and support staff who ignored the patient. She explained that silence was also a choice. Those who failed to act were dismissed or suspended, effective immediately. Some cried. Some looked angry. None argued. Security escorted several staff members out of the building. Their steps echoed through the hallway. Other employees watched in silence, realizing how fast trust could disappear. Inside the emergency room, the man lay on a hospital bed. His breathing was steadier now. Monitors showed improvement, slow but real. A nurse adjusted his blanket and checked his vitals with care this time. The woman visited him quietly. She did not wake him. She stood near the bed and watched for a moment. Relief passed over her face. He was alive. That mattered more than anything else. Later, the man opened his eyes. He looked confused, then afraid. The nurse explained where he was and that he was safe. He asked why he was brought back inside. His voice was weak. The woman stepped forward and spoke gently. She told him help had arrived and that what happened to him was wrong. She apologized, not as an excuse, but as a promise that it would not happen again. Tears filled the man's eyes. He nodded slowly. He did not speak much. He was too tired, but his silence carried relief. By noon, news spread through the hospital. New rules were announced. Emergency training was ordered. Equality policies were reinforced. Staff would be watched more closely. Mistakes would no longer be ignored. The woman addressed the remaining employees. She reminded them why hospitals exist: to protect life, to treat everyone the same. She warned that power without humanity destroys trust. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky looked clearer. People passed the hospital without knowing what had changed inside. But something had. The man rested, surrounded by care that came too late, but not too late. His life continued because someone chose to act. That day ended with quiet reflection. Jobs were lost. Lessons were learned. A system was shaken. Justice had been served, not with anger, but with action. And in that hospital, silence would never again feel safe. Days passed, and the hospital slowly returned to its normal routine. Patients arrived, doctors worked, and nurses moved through the halls. But something inside the building was different now. The air felt more careful, more aware. People spoke with purpose, knowing eyes were watching and choices mattered. The man recovered step by step. His strength returned slowly, but each day was better than the last. Doctors explained that if he had waited longer, the result could have been tragic. He listened quietly, understanding how close he came to losing everything. One afternoon, he sat near the window, watching sunlight fall across the floor. His son stood beside him, holding his hand. The child smiled, unaware of how fragile that moment once was. The man closed his eyes and took a deep breath, thankful for life. The woman visited him one final time before leaving the hospital. She wore no badge now, only simple clothes. She asked how he was feeling. He told her he was healing, not just in body, but in heart. He thanked her for seeing him when others did not. She replied softly that seeing was not enough. Acting was what mattered. She reminded him that his life had value, no matter where he came from or what he looked like. Those words stayed with him long after she left the room. Before she walked away, she told him his case would change how hospitals were monitored across the region. New checks would be done. Staff would be trained better. Reports would be reviewed more often. One life had already changed many others. Weeks later, the hospital released a public statement. It admitted failure and promised improvement. Many people read it, but few understood the true cost behind those words. For the man, it was not about statements. It was about being alive. He returned home and slowly rebuilt his routine. Simple things felt different now. Morning light, shared meals, quiet evenings. Every moment felt earned. Sometimes he thought about that night. The cold bench, the rain, the door that closed. He remembered the fear, but he also remembered the door opening again. The staff who remained at the hospital carried that night with them too. New employees were trained with the story, not as gossip, but as warning. Silence was no longer safe. Kindness was no longer optional. The doctor who lost her job faded from the headlines. Her actions became a lesson in medical schools and training rooms. A reminder that knowledge without humanity was dangerous. The woman continued her work elsewhere, moving from place to place, unseen but alert. She believed systems could change, but only when people were willing to face uncomfortable truths. For the man, justice was not revenge. It was knowing the next person would not be sent away. It was knowing his pain had meaning beyond himself. One evening, he stood outside the hospital again, this time healthy and steady. He looked at the doors and felt no anger, only resolve. He hoped no one else would sit where he once did. Life moved forward, but the lesson remained clear. Power must protect, not judge. Care must be equal, not selective. And silence must never be allowed to decide who deserves help. That night proved one simple truth. One choice can save a life. One voice can stop injustice. And one moment of courage can change everything forever.